In this course, we're going to be building a messenger clone. So some of these features will include real-time sending messages, ability to create new chats between individual users or a group chat if you want to. You'll be able to upload images, there will be an emoji picker, and much more. So let's dive into the examples of how this application will roughly look like when we're done with this course. This will be a two-part course, so there will be two long videos roughly lasting about an hour to 2.5 hours each. And let's head into it. So some of the features in this course will be the ability to have group chat and just a standalone chat. So I'm currently on the home page, able to create a chat here. If we then head in here, you can see this has already been added. I haven't even refreshed the page. We also have the ability to go ahead and create a group chat. So I could add in Matilde and Maya here, and both of these works fine. So if you look here now, I've also been added to this chat. You can see who's member of the chat up here. If I go in here and let's just say hello world, we're also able to basically pick in an emoji. We could also upload a picture if we want to and send that through. So that has already gone through on this side now with an emoji and a picture, which is brilliant. So this now allows us to essentially go ahead and send anything in real time with messages. Later on, we will be adding delete functionality as well and delete the chat functionality as well. We're also going to be able to message in group chats here and just have control or command shift enter and you'll be able to send a message. We have the ability, you can see in here, to see this message written by Matilde. I could go and say hi. And if we go into our database now, instead of having to log into many different accounts, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to say use ID 3, which would then go ahead in here and have Maya added in. We're also going to have infinitive scroll added in. So these were sent at the same time. That's why they are displaying just here beside each other. So just for reference. But yeah, later on we're going to be able to do infinitive scroll. So if I go in here and to the messages table, I could just go in here and add a few more messages. And you see we can scroll back here. Another thing that's quite interesting to view, which is the feature that allows us to essentially have the ability to view when you're typing using a typing indicator. So I'm just gonna go ahead now and I'm gonna have both Safari open and the browser open here at the same time. So this doesn't look perfect at the moment on responsive design, but that's what it is, so we will look at that later. So if I go in here, makes these two a bit smaller, you can see we have a typing indicator down there. So we also have this ability to have a typing indicator. So these are just some of the features we're going to see throughout this course. So let's head into the project and actually start creating this project and start working on it. So let's go ahead and get started with creating a new app in Laravel called Messenger YT for YouTube. And let's use Jetstream here. I'm going to use View with Inertia, and you can use dark mode as well if you want to and support that. We don't really need Inertia SSR because we're not really thinking about SEO for a messages application, and we don't need API support. You may want to enable email verification, but I'll leave that out for this course. We want to use PES as our testing framework, and we would like to initialize a new GitHub repository. And for this course, I'm going to be using PostgreSQL, and I'm going to leave out running the database migrations for now, and I'll do that later on because I need to change the environmental configurations when they have run. And with this sorted now, I think we can just head into the application and start looking at setting our database up. And then afterwards, let's head in and set up Reverb. Alright, let's head into environmental configuration. And in here, I just want to go ahead and set this up with the correct configurations here so we can use this bit here. So in this course we're going to be using Postgres, and because we're using Postgres in this course we actually have a different username because I'm using DB Engine here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Table Plus now, which is going to be the database graphical user interface I'm going to be using throughout this course. And I'll go into this database here. This works great. So let's go ahead now, and we should just be able to migrate everything. There we go. Let's check this is migrated, and it is. Perfect. So with that sorted, now we actually have an app set up here, and let's head in and just tidy up some of the things first. So first and foremost, I want to go ahead and say PHP Artisan install broadcast. That enables us to install Laravel Reverb, which is going to be the real-time functionality we're going to be using throughout this course. And we would also like to install the relevant node dependencies as well. And with that sorted, now we should have in our JS folder inside here an echo.js file, and inside our environmental files what I want to go ahead and do is just set this up properly. So because I'm using Laravel Herd, and this setup may vary depending on what you use. For example, if you use Docker, you may want to put the host to a different name and so on, but for Reverb I find the easiest one to do is literally just to put in the URL here and then the port, and now I'm just going to put the port to 6001 instead, although you could keep it at 8080 if you want to. And for that should be everything we need. I'm not going to be showing you how to set up Reverb with HTTPS, although you can do that locally. I find that to be quite annoying because you have a lot of issues going on and it just takes a lot longer, so I don't think that's necessary for this course. Now the first thing we can do is go into our migration here, make a migration, and we want to just add last active to users table, and I think we may want to redo that actually because that didn't go right there. So we want to just call this users, and we just want to have a timestamp in here which is going to be last active at. And let's make it nullable because we don't want this to be required. So with that sorted, we now have the ability to keep track of when a user was last active. So we just want to go ahead and migrate this now. And then the first model we're going to go ahead and create for this course is we're going to have a model in here called chat. And for the chat model and for the migration, we need a few different things set up. So for this one, I would say we should really just need in here an enum, because we just want to specify, in this case, the type. So let's go ahead and pass through an enum. So with Laravel 11, you can just create an enum using command, and I'm going to call this chat type. So inside chat type, we want to have a few different things set up. We want to have the two types we want to have, and that would be group and we also have a const, and we also have one here for standalone. Perfect. So what we can go ahead and do now is we can just go ahead and say chat type group or chat type standalone. Let's go ahead and make sure we actually properly import this. There we go. So the other thing we want to have in here is we want to have multiple users potentially in a chat. So we can't just rely, in this case, on having, for example, a table where there's a recipient ID, for example, in here, and a user ID. We need to actually have multiple users so we can have group chats. So we want to essentially create a migration here, which is going to be a pivot table. We're going to call this create chat user table. So inside create chat user table, we just want to have a user ID and a chat ID, and then we're going to use a relationship to basically grab the relevant ones in here. Now there is one other thing we need in here. We may as well add this now. So we want to be able to keep track of when messages were last read in here by a user. So we want to have a timestamp, which is going to be called last read at, and we're going to have this as nullable, just like that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and migrate. Perfect. So that should just leave you with these two extra tables here, where we have last read at and the chats table here, which is perfect. That's what we want here. So inside the models now, let's go into our chat model. And in here, we really just want to set up the fillables. And because we have a very simple table here for now, we're just gonna go in and have type as a fillable here. We want a public function in here with all the users, and because a chat belongs to many, we want to use the belongs to many relationships in here. We just want to have user class and specify the table in here that we're looking up, chat user. Now, the other thing we need as well when we have created the messages table is a relationship to that. So let's go ahead and make sure we now have a messages table, a migration we will set up. Alright, let's create a model in here called message. We want to have migration here as well. And inside the messages table, we just want to have a few things in here. So to get started with, let's head in and add the relationship for the chat. We need this to be constrained and on the lead cascade, and the same for the user ID as well here. We also want in here the content, and let's actually make this a text in case someone writes a very long message. Let's have a boolean in here as well, and that's going to be for is typing. We're gonna basically store an empty message in the database when someone is typing, and then we're gonna filter this out basically in this case for when you are typing. So when you stop typing and this gets set to false, we would then filter it out and update with an event listener. So that's basically the best way I found to do it, but you may want to do this in a different way, but that's the approach I'm taking for this. And the last thing we want to do is a JSON array here where we're going to have attachments, which is going to be a list of images, and it's going to be nullable. You could also decide to upload different files. It's really easy to do from here, because what we're just doing is we're allowing users to upload different files, and that it may break if you upload a very long file, because we're not going to go through and chunk the file on the front end and send it to the back end that way. So we're not going to allow the user to necessarily upload ridiculously long videos, but you can upload shorter videos and that if you want to. You could display that, but I'm only going to show you how to display images, but it's really easy to replicate for videos as well if you want to. So let's go ahead and migrate this now. And with that sorted, we now have most of the tables ready here. So let's go ahead in here and have a relationship for the messages. So for the messages, we just want to have a public function, messages, and we can have many messages. So let's go ahead and return this has many message class. And let's leave this model for now. We will go back to some of the other functions later on. Let's head into the message model. And in here, we want to have a cast for when we upload files, so we don't forget about this later. For the attachments, cast this to an array. We also want to have a public function for belongs to chat. And let's just copy and paste this down for the user one. And that's about it for the message model. So with that sorted, now we actually have the model sorted up for the most basic functionality. So what we want to go ahead and do now is in here, in the pages aspect, I'm going to go ahead and create a folder, and let's call this chats. And in here we want to have a show.view. This is going to be the one we show whenever you view any chat. And then we're going to have a new.view. And the new one is just going to be when we create a new chat. So we need both of these to work, because otherwise it will be quite clunky to write a lot of code in here where you have to display different scenarios for new chat and so on. So we have a route for each of them. For these pages here, we need our own layout. So let's head into the layouts folder. And in here, I'm going to call this chat layout. And let's go ahead and make a template here. And we don't actually need to import anything in here. So we want to have MX auto height of screen and width 4, max width 7XL, grow, and large flex XL. We're gonna have PX2, just like that, and then we're gonna have a flex again, and in here we're gonna have a slot with the name sidebar. And down here we're gonna have a flex with a minimum height of 4, and flex column, flex grow, overflow auto, so that it works neatly with the scroll feature, and we're just gonna have a slot in here. So now we have this set up, we can go in for both of these templates in here and just import the chat layout. I'm not going to be using TypeScript throughout this course, so I'm just gonna get rid of that, and I prefer having this set up on the top page. There we go. So now we are basically able to display the sidebar in here and the show.view. So let's go ahead into the code now and start outlining the basics for the sidebar and fake some chats in the database. I'm gonna go ahead and first and foremost just fake some basic chats. And then we're going to go ahead in here and create a user actually. So let's go into the browser now to create a user so we can test this out. Alright, so in here let's go ahead and set up the layout inside the chat page. So to get started with, I want to go ahead and just add in the template here with vslot sidebar. For this one, we want to basically create a component folder. Inside here, we're going to have a sidebar folder with sidebar.view. And in here, I'm just going to leave this blank for now. So let's go ahead and load in the sidebar here. And after that, let's go ahead and take a look at how it looks as well. So I'm just gonna add a div in here and say hi. So inside on the website, let's create our first user. I'm just gonna call this Matilde, add in an email address, set a password, and there we go. So with that sorted, we should now be able to head up here and go into, in this case, we would have to actually register the root, I think. So let's head in here and move all of this out inside here. And in here, we don't really want to have a closure function. Rather, we would want to have a controller. So I'm going to comment this out so PHP Artisan won't complain. So PHP Artisan, make controller, and for this one, we're just going to call this chat show controller. Make it invocable. We also want to, while we're at it, just create a chat new controller or new chat controller. So let's go ahead and uncomment this. And in here, we just want to have chat show controller class. And let's just import instead so we don't have to have the whole namespace showing up. Perfect. And I just want to name this chat.show. We can get rid of the dashboard for now. I'm going to leave the component, but we don't need the dashboard page. So inside here, we, as a starter, just want to return inertia, render, and chat show, because we are essentially pointing it to this page here. So if we go back in here now and we go away from the dashboard because we don't need that anymore, we just need to run npm run dev. And let's see what's going on here. So currently we are having an issue with chat show not found. So let's go in here and just check. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this chat.show. And currently we can't find a page, so let's just make sure in here we have everything we need. We do, and we need to rename this folder to chats. You probably already noticed this mistake, but in case anything goes wrong, this should fix the issue. So you can see we have hi here. We can add a sidebar on the side there. So for this part here, let's go in and essentially for now, I just want to go in and have a class here of flex column, flex grow, overflow, hidden, py6, px4, small px6, and lg pl8. And then we just want to have an extra large pl6. Okay, so that spacing is coming up nicely there. So I'm also gonna have another one here with flex grow, overflow auto, and let's add in a space y5 and a pb24. There we go. And on top of that, we also want to have a messages component, which is really just a small container where we add in all the messages. So let's go ahead and have a chat folder, and let's add in a messages view. So we don't really pass any data in here. This is really just a container for the messages, just to simplify the code and trying to reduce the amount in each page. So this is a really simple component, but all we have in here is the template with a UL, a class space y5, and we also have a slot in here. So let's go ahead and add that in now. Perfect. And let's go down here, and later on we're gonna have, and I'm just gonna comment this out later, this looks rather empty for when there's no messages, but we will fix make it show dynamically later. Perfect. Alright, so with that sorted, we also want to have down here ability to send messages. So we want to create a text area in send message view later on. And in here we do want to pass through a chat, which we are gonna get from define props. So let's go ahead and define props chat, and I'm gonna just say required true for now. So with that sorted, let's go in here, just add in a diff for now, and let's add in a script setup, and in here define props chat as big type. I think we will just leave the type out now and just say required true. Perfect. So with that sorted, let's head into our chat show controller. So in here we actually want to pass through a chat. We don't need the request for now, so I'm gonna go in here and just pass through chat. Perfect. And we also want to start making some resources. Now throughout this course we're going to be heavily utilizing resources so that we can essentially manage our data that we pass through to the front end easier, because if you just do all of it in the controller, it's going to get really messy and it's just going to get a bit more awkward to manage in the long run. So let's go ahead and take a look at this chat resource. So inside our chat resource, for now we will just leave it fairly basic. So in here I think we will add an ID, and we also want to pass through in here the type. We also want to pass through the users, and we can easily get that by heading into chat.php. You can see we created this belongs to many relationship, and in here for now I'm just gonna say this and then users. But what we actually want to do is we want to create an extension on that relationship inside chat model, because in here we basically want to have users in the chat specifically pass through as well. So users in chat, and this is going to be, in this case, return this users where user ID, and we basically don't want to get, in this case, the currently authenticated user, and we want to get that just like that. So we basically don't want to show the currently authenticated user, and for this basically all we need to then say is inside our chat resource we just need to pass through users in chat. While we're at it, we also need to go into Jetstream. Make sure that you have profile pictures enabled so that it automatically generates one. And let's go ahead and create a user resource. The reason why we want to go ahead and create this now already is because we kind of want that for the users we're displaying. So inside our user resource, let's go ahead in here and pass through an array with an ID of this user, the name of the user, avatar, which in this case is just going to be this profile photo URL, just like that. And then inside a chat resource, we can just copy this, have a user resource. We can collect the users in the chat. Now bear in mind, this could be a single user, it could be many users depending on the scenario. And we also want to count how many messages we get in. So let's go ahead and say this messages and count. We also want to, in this case, have the unread count later on, but I'm gonna leave that for now as 0, just because we need to just take a look at the chat.view as well. So in here, let's go ahead and make sure we now receive this chat that we're requiring. So what we can just go ahead and do for now is really simply just say chat and then chat resource make chat, just like that. Now we're basically able to retrieve the chat in here. So that's actually everything we need to essentially be able to display the chat. But obviously we now get an issue here because we are just on the home page, but we're requiring an ID. So let's go ahead to the first one here and let's take a look. So for now this is quite empty, so I'm just going to go see if we can print anything out in here, and we can. Perfect. So it seems like everything is working so far. We should just be able to go ahead and pass through the existing chat, just like that. Perfect. So this is working so far, but one of the issues we're having is that we haven't associated any users with this chat. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass through the only user we have right now. Then I'm going to go into the users model and I'm going to go ahead and create, let's just say 4 users. And I'm just going to randomize the email here. So Tom here, and we're going to have Taylor, and then we're going to have Maya. Perfect. So we can now go ahead and basically add in a few different users here. And as you can see, we now have all these users being shown in here. Now, one of the important things here is that we want to eager load this. So we want to actually go in and say chat, and we want to make sure that we are not essentially having too high of a query count. So to do this, we can go ahead and require Laravel debug bar and see how many queries we get. Performance is going to be really important when we are dealing with a lot of different messages. And while we are going to be using infinitive scroll, it's still important to keep the query count as low as possible, because at scale it will break if you don't have a good low query count. Alright, so one of the things we want to go ahead and do for this is in here we obviously want to get the messages. So for now, before we start allowing this to be a bit more complicated with eager loading and so on, we essentially want to pass through all the messages in here. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and in here we're going to go and create a variable called messages, and we're going to assign the chat messages with, in this case, user, and we want to grab the latest messages, and later on we will talk about the pagination and that, but for now we just want to keep this super simple so that we can get this working on a very basic scale. So let's go ahead in here and create a new resource called message resource. Perfect. Inside message resource, we want to have a few different things. So as a starter, we just want to pass through the ID. We want to have content. This content. We want to have knowledge of if the user is typing. We want to essentially have the user in here, and this is where we're going to use the user resource, and we're going to just pass this through when loaded user. And then we're going to have attachments as well, but we're not really going to use that really for now, so let's just leave it like that. So we're passing through the messages, so hopefully inside our show page we should be able to pass this through. We just need to quickly create a messages one in here. Perfect. And then on top of that, I just want to go ahead and just create one message for now. Okay, and just make sure we're on the right chat. We're on chat 1. We're relating this to chat 1. And let's just go ahead and make sure that we, for now, we'll just die on messages. And we also want to make sure, obviously, we put this through a message resource. Inside the chat show controller, let's also just make sure that we have so currently we're getting an issue with map into, so let's take a look at why this is the case. Let's go into our chat model. And it does look like we have the right relationship set up here for the message class. And in here we have everything required as well, so that should be fine. Let's go into the message resource again, and let's just see what happens if we just get rid of these and if that breaks it or doesn't do anything there. Perfect. Okay, so it's not related to the eager loading. And we may also need to get them, which would probably be a quite good idea. There we go. So yeah, you can see we're passing through the user. We are eager loading it in here. We get it when loaded. the user relationship. And yeah, that basically allows us now to show any given messages in here. We can then essentially iterate through them using, for now, we're just going to set up in here a message.view. And inside message.view, we want to have a few different things. So we also want to have a script up here. And we want to have a div in here. Not inside the script setup, in here. And we want to have two different LIs. So let's just put them onto a new line. One of them is if you are the existing user and are the current user that's sending the messages, and one for where if you're receiving a message from any other user in the chat. So for this, let's go ahead and add in some props up here. So we want to take in a few different things for the props. As a starter, I want to have an understanding of if I am the sender. Number two, we want to have a message. This is going to be a type object, and it's going to be required. Now, pretty simply said, we can essentially go ahead in here and check for two different things. We want to check if sender and if message.content or if message.attachments. And the reason why is because if typing is set to true, we don't want to display that, so we just want to ignore typing completely. And in here we want to check if you're not the sender. And then we have a few different classes we can add in here. And I'm going to actually add it here to a new line, just like that. Perfect. And for the other one, we do want to have a different class though, so I'm going to go ahead and add that here because this is on the other side. So there we go. And then in here, obviously, we want to have a few different things such as the user image and username, the date it was posted, and so on. So let's go ahead and add that in now. Alright, so let's go ahead and design some of the message template here. So for the one where we have the sender, in this case we want to go ahead and have an image. And for the image we just want to have to go into the message, and then we want to find the user and the avatar of the user. And for the alt text, all we really need is the ability just to say, in this case, we can probably make it more sophisticated than that later on, but for now we'll just put message.user.name. And with that sorted, we should now be able to display a message in here. So outside of that, we want to have a div in here with a flex colon. We want to have a span in here where we're going to have a class of text small, ml2, mb1, text grade 500, and in here we just want to have message, user, name, and then a dash with a time here. So we want to have, in this case, time and a title, but we will leave that till we actually have a human readable date. So for now I'm just going to have message that created that, which is not going to look as great. We also want to apply a few classes in the image class. So inline block, size 9, and rounded full. And then outside of that, we also want to go inside this flex column here and have another div. This div is going to be for the message. So we're gonna have a border in here. We're gonna have border grade 200. We're gonna have rounded 2XL P4 space white 3 dark beijing neutral. And we're also gonna have a dark border neutral 700. And then we're gonna have in here a div, which is gonna be bf message.content, and in here we just wanna have message.content. Perfect. And then for this one down here, we want to do something relatively similar, but we want to basically, display the image on the other way around. So we are gonna have a div in here where we have the following classes. And then inside this div, you're gonna have these classes with a span. This one is gonna have text small, and it's gonna have ML2, MB1, and we're gonna have text grade 500, and we're gonna have message user.name, and again we're gonna add in the time in here, just like that. Then we're gonna have another one here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and copy the classes here so the whole course is not seen on me typing in all the classes. So we're gonna have this as background color blue instead. And then just like before, we wanna display the content. So let's go in and create a partials folder in here. And in this partials folder, I wanna have a time component, or we can actually call this user time.view because we're displaying both the username and the time. So the reason for this is just to really simplify our components as fast as we can, so that this becomes easier to manage. So we now know that every time we want to display anything in this span area where it's going to be above the message, we can easily just go ahead and edit it in here. So if you wanted to change it, you don't have to go through a very long message component when it gets longer. And we're just going to have a message in here. So let's go ahead and make sure we pass through the message. And the same up here. Perfect. So this should allow us to display the content, the message, and so on. Alright, let's head in and try to see if we can get this working now and actually take a look at all these messages we have here. Alright, so let's head into our chat page here, and in here let's actually start rendering the message component. So in here we want to pass through a message, which is just going to be message here, and we also want to iterate through the individual messages. So to do that, I'm going to go in here as well, and let's go into this div here, and in here I want to have essentially a VF for messages for now, and then we also want to head into our messages component, and what I'm actually just gonna do in here, so I'm gonna create a template. And I'm gonna have a V for message in messages for now. And we will have a key of message.id. Inside our app service provider, inside the boot method, we want to have a JSON resource with our wrapping set. Just like that. Let's head in and see what it looks like now. Alright, so we currently are rendering this message here just fine. However, what we aren't really doing inside the message component is displaying it based on the sender, because we haven't defined that variable. So we want to go in and say sender, and in this case all we really want to do is we just want to go to page props of user ID and then check if it equals message dot user dot ID. So we just want to check if those two equal each other. And you can now see this is on this side here. And I'm gonna go ahead as well and make sure that we have a background color in here so that it looks a little bit different. So let's just go ahead and have maybe BG gray 50. Just like that, yeah. Or we could just leave it as it is instead. That's fine. And we could change the message bubble in here if you want to a different color for this message here. So you can see we have BG white here, so we could change this to BG gray 100. It's really up to you which way you want to do that. We also want to make sure this is rounded. Just like that. And yeah, now we're actually able to display the messages in here. So now that we're able to display the messages, we do also want to make sure we have a profile picture inside the message component for the case that you are the person who are receiving the message. So the moment we have the user time component, we have the message component here. And just down here we want to have the username here. So if we go into our database, we should be able to essentially head in here and duplicate this down to chat, but a user that's different. There we go. So here we have Tom Baker and his profile picture. This doesn't look perfect right now, but we're gonna deal with some of the styling issues later down the line. At the moment, we're actually just able to see the messages now, which is perfect. So the other thing I want to go ahead and work on now is essentially getting the sidebar to look a bit nicer. At least just have the basic thing laid out so we can have a nicer sidebar here. So we're gonna add in these different classes here. I also think we want to add in these classes here. Inside show page here, we want to now hopefully be able to see this separation here, which is perfect. Inside the sidebar, we also want to display the title here. So we're going to go ahead and create a top bar in here where we're going to call this have justify between. And we're going to have a H3 or maybe even H1 in here called chats. Just like that. And then we're gonna have in here an SVG with a route to chat.new. This SVG I found, if you're wondering where you can get this, inside Hero Icons. So I just found the relevant SVG in here. I just selected this one. We want to also make sure that we are importing link. There we go. And inside web.php, for now, I'm just gonna ignore the fact that this is exactly the same, but just have a chat.new so we can at least have this root link here. So it should do no difference here, except it just won't work for now, so that's fine. Just so we can have this here. So this should point to just the home page of the app where we will be able to create a new chat. So that's always going to be the default when you get into the page. And outside this, we do want to have an input field here, which is going to be a search field. We're going to have a ref here for search input, which we're going to use later on. And we're going to have a few classes in here. Just going to put this onto a new line. And we're going to have placeholder search chats. Just like that. Although we do want to see if we can get this to be there we go. So now it takes up the full width here. And then just below here, we just want to have a template again. And in here, we want to have all the chats. So what we do here is we basically go into our chat show controller. And let's get all the chats in. So to get the chats, let's head into our chat show controller, and here we're gonna assign a variable chats to, in this case, it's just gonna be based on two different things here. So this is including the search feature. So chats, we basically in this application want to pass through a query. So the query is going to be equal to request input. We need to pass this through in here as well. I'm just going to call this query and set this to empty by default. Just like that. And if query is set, we just want to do chat search query. For now, we're not going to fully implement the search function yet, but that's basically what we want to do in here. And let's say that the query isn't set, then we just want to have chat where has users. We want to do a function here where we say query. Inside this query, we want to check query where user ID is the same as user ID. So we basically just want to have user in here, and we will assign the user variable up here to be of user. Just like that. And then we just want to essentially duplicate this here and have this as chats instead. And then we want to collect the chats. Just like that. And then inside our show.view, we essentially just duplicate this for now and have chats instead. And then into the sidebar, we will pass through chats, and we will then make sure that we also in here define props chats and set that to be required. And I'm gonna just move this up to the top of the component here, just like that. And then in this template here, what we can then go ahead and do is we can essentially iterate through them. So v for chat in chats, and key is going to be chat.id. And then in here, we're just going to print out the chat for now. And then let's see why this error is happening inside here. So inside our chat controller here, we do also want to have with users, and we want to get it. There we go. So now we have the chats being rendered through here, which is excellent. So what we can actually do is we can go into our components folder inside sidebar and create a sidebar item.view. And this is going to be the component where we will essentially just display the links to the individual sidebars. So we're going to have a link in here. We're going to have a script set up. We're going to have define prop set in here, and we're going to require a chat, which is going to be required. We are going to have a HIF link here to root chat.show, and we're going to pass through chat here. And we set this as chat.show in here, where we're passing through the chat variable, which is perfect. So with that sorted now, we actually have the ability to also go ahead and add an li here. So we're going to have in here a class of p4 border and space y 2, and then on top of that, we're also going to have a small helper function here, which will help us check in the case that this is the active link, so that we can apply some background color here of BG gray 100. So that's basically everything we need in here. Outside of that, we just need to display the profile picture of the last person who sent a message, and at the same time also show if they send a file or images, or if they just send some content. So let's go ahead and display that. Alright, let's go ahead and do some more work in the sidebar. So in here we want to have a flex with justified between. We want to have a flex with a space x of 2.5, and inside here we want to have an image, and we're gonna have alt text, and we're gonna have a profile picture, and we're gonna have this from the last user who sent a message. So in the message resource we have the user we can grab here, so we can easily just go ahead and go in to the chat resource, and we need to basically get the last message there. So if we go into our chat resource, all we have to do is we just have to go in and say last message. In this case, we're going to have a message resource make this message last. Alright, so with that sorted, we should just be able to head into our chat resource now and retrieve the value from chat. And in case the chat is empty, we don't have an image here, so we want to go in as well to the sidebar item here and make sure that we have this null safe operator. And I'm gonna just go ahead and copy this here. So basically what we want to check is the last message avatar, and if not, we'll go by default to the other one, which is our own avatar, because this is a new chat. We could also go for the other user's image, but let's leave that out for now, because that just takes a bit extra work in for this really long video. So we just want to put in the name here really, so that we can have some alt text here so we can display. We also want to have in here a class where we're gonna have rounded full and a width of 6. And then we also in here gonna have a span where we're gonna have, in this case, the name displayed. So if we go ahead and log in again, and currently we're getting an issue here where I think it's because we're heading into the dashboard page. So if we head into our Jetstream page here, actually I think it's Fortify, sorry. And in here, let's just go ahead and have this as dash. There we go. So with this sorted now, let's head into our sidebar. And instead of just showing the chat we have here, let's actually get in the sidebar item. And let's make sure we also can check for errors here. So let's head into our view components here, just see what's going on. So we do have, this is a standalone chat, we have the users in here, and we have the unread account and so on. Just need to check why it's not displaying fully. So we have the key here for chat ID, which is great as well. And then we also want to have below this div here, another one with a flex of justify between. And we want to have the last message sent in here. So we want to have a class in here of text small. We want to truncate it, and we want to have a text neutral of 800 and dark text neutral 200. And we just want to check the last message content here. So if we say if add this onto a new line, we should just be able to output the last message content here. Let's just double check that the component actually loads up here as well. So let's just pass through Oh yeah, the issue in here may actually just be to do with, let's go ahead and import link. There we go. So that looks a bit better. So if we head back in here, you should be able to see it looking something along these lines here. So let's go ahead and fix some of the other issues we have in here. So we have this strange little dot there. Let's see why that's there. So let's have list none on the URL. There we go. So that's fine, that's perfect. Let's go ahead and go into database. Let's add the users here to chat number 2. There you go. And obviously this one still works even though there's no text. So what we want to go ahead now is basically, because there's certain instances where we don't know what we need to write. So for example, let's say that you haven't sent the message yet. There's no attachments. You want to have a draft in here like this, because then we just haven't gotten anything written there. And then there's instances where we have no file, where we've sent a file, and in this case we will just say send a file. It could also be a picture, but I'm just gonna see send a file. You could do it a bit more complex and see if you send pictures instead of files, but you could also send both. So I'll just write send a file for now. And then outside of that, we just need one other thing, which is a span with a VF chat, the unread count. And in here we need to have a few different classes. So let's go ahead in here. We need to have this as relative, inline flex. We need to have this as text x is small, BG blue 500. Actually, I'm gonna do indigo 500, and let's say text wide. We're gonna have rounded full, py 0.5 and px 1.5, and then we're gonna just have chat on red count in here. We need to make sure this is greater than 0. So if we go into our chat resource and set this to 50 or 5 maybe, just, you can see this now displays this nice little one here. And if we change it back to 0, this should hide. Perfect. So I think that's everything we need for the sidebar right now. It works perfectly fine. You can easily switch between them and so on. So let's go ahead and work a bit more on the messages now. Alright, so now that we're back, let's head into our show page here and let's take a look at what we can do. So for this looks rather empty, let's go ahead and change this a bit around. So I want to go in here and say text center for now, and then we just want to have VF if messages dot length is equal to 0. So in here we have this looks rather empty, which is perfect. That's what we want it to look like. So the next thing we can work on is the ability to send a message, so we can start looking at how we can implement this real-time functionality as well. So if we go into our send message component, what we want to require in here is just the chat. We just need to know where we're posting this to. And we want this to be a sticky, and it needs to go to the bottom. We want this to be background white and a padding of 4. We also want in here to have a relative, and we want to have a text area in here. where the name is gonna be message. The ID is gonna be message. We can ignore the rows for now. We want to have these on each side here, so like this. And we also want this to have a class here of a few different things. I'm just gonna, because this is quite long, so it's gonna take forever to type out. I'm just gonna go ahead and paste this in here. All the code will be available on GitHub, where the link will be in the description when you are wanting, if you want to just copy it from there instead. But basically, yeah, we're going to be using GitHub throughout this course. We also want to have a form here, so we want to have form, and we're going to set this to use form, which imports from inertia. And here we want two different things, because we want to be able to send attachments as well. So we want to have content, we want to have attachments, which is going to be an empty array. So we want to set this to vmodel form.content. Perfect. So if we go back in now, you can see we have this nice text area here, and we also in here want to have the ability to have a placeholder, so we can just say what's up, and this works fine. That's perfect. And then after this text area here, we want to basically have some different icons showing as well. So we want absolute bottom px, we want to have insert xpx, we want to have p2, rounded md, bg wide, dark, background color neutral, and 900. Just like that. And then we just want to have some flex in here, so I'm just going to copy the icons in. Again, you can find similar icons in your icons for free. So this is going to be the emoji one. We're also going to have an emoji picker, which we're going to be setting up very soon. And we also just want to have the ability to upload a file. And then down here at the bottom, we want to be able to send a message. So we're going to have a function in here called send message. We're also going to handle file upload. So let's go ahead and do that now. Just like that. In here we would just want to set form attachments and array from event, the target, the files, and we want to filter this by file type, just like that. So you see we can easily go ahead and upload an image here. And if we go in now to send message, let's see what this looks like. But I may need to refresh, so let's try again. And in here we then have this form array of 0 still. Okay, so we just want to make sure that this is being properly called in here. Alright, And then inside our send message function, we just want to quickly double check here if form.content.trim equals an empty string, and if form attachments.length equals 0, then we just want to return nothing. And otherwise we want to go ahead and basically send everything. So I just want to go ahead and just check that this is being triggered. So let's console log event, and then console log form.attachments. So as you can see here, we get the file through, which is perfect, but it does not seem to be setting inside this form here. Let's just see if this works. Still doesn't seem to be going through. So another thing we need to see if we can get sorted in here is that we need to import ref. We also want in here a helper function to check if it's an image. We also need a helper function in here. This actually, for consistency, I'm just gonna have all these as functions instead. There we go. And outside of that, we also want a function in here where we can render the image. You turn URL that create object from URL. Alright, let's go ahead and make sure we can also have a preview in here. So just under this div here, let's have a div where we have a class, and we will call this flex base x2 and mb2. And for now, we just want to check if form attachments.length, and then we want to have in here another div with a relative position and a v4 file and index in form.attachments. We want to have a key in here of index, and then we just want to, for now, print out the file just to see if that works. And it works fine. Perfect. So what we want to go ahead in here and do now is we want to have an image. We want to say is image. First and foremost, we want to make sure we actually have a function here we can call. And we want to say, and this is in a VF, and we want to then check file the type, We then want to have a source in here where we want to say render image and file alt text. For now we will just say preview of image because we don't really have any information about the image. So we want to have a few classes in here. So I'm just going to put this on a few new lines. In here we want to have a class of width25 for h24 object cover rounded large. And then we want to have a button in here. And for now we'll just have an X in here, and then we'll have a class of let's say absolute top 0 right 0 text wide and rounded full py 0.5 and px 1.5 text small and bg red 400 or dark mode bg red 500, just like that. So now we want to be able to remove these attachments, and that's actually quite simple. So let's go ahead and do that. So all we just want to go ahead and do in here is basically just base this on the index, and we just want to say form attachments to splice index 1. What we can do for the alt text is we can get the index through here. So we can just say, in this case, pre-rail of image, and then in this case index. Or we could even try to get the file dot name, I think. So if we head in here, let's see what happens if we go in and inspect. We have alt text preview of image other image logo.png. So let's do that for now. Then it's a little bit more useful for accessibility purposes, as useful as we can make it. So now we're able to preview things. We're able to essentially upload and preview the messages. Let's go ahead and install this view-free emoji picker. So all we need to do is just run npm install for this package, and then we just want to import this up here. Emoji picker from view-free emoji picker. And then basically I think what we want to do in here is we have this here where we can then say click or view on click show emojis equals to the opposite of show emojis. So let's go up and make sure we can actually just quickly define that. So let's have a const show emojis equal to ref false. Perfect. And then in here we just want to have another div, and we just want to have in here a vf show emojis, and then if we go in now we should be able to just add in the emoji picker. And I want to say native should be true. I'm going to use the native icons, and for now let's just see what happens. That doesn't look perfect. So I think inside our app.js file we may want to import some styling. So let's head in there. So what we basically just want to do is head in and import here. There we go. So now we have all these emojis here, but this kind of breaks our bar here. So if we do anything, it doesn't look great. So let's go ahead and fix that and actually make sure that we have a neat way to display this by adding in some good classes here. So for send message for the emojis, let's go in here and let's take a look and add an absolute bottom 12, left 0, BG wide, border gray 200, rounded large, and shadow large. Alright, let's go ahead and create a controller to send a message. So that's now created. Let's head in here. In here, we also want to pass through the chat. Let's go ahead and now create this post route here, where we're gonna have instead send message controller. Gonna import this, and we're gonna have chat or message dot send. Just like that, and let's head into our front end now and connect this. So inside our send message here, we just need to head in to this function we created here. We just want to say form post, and we want to have a root in here, message to send. We want to pass through props to chat, so we need to make sure that this is now going to be equal to props, otherwise this will fail. And then we need to have an object in here, and in here we want to have a few different things. We want to have preserve scroll, that's going to be true. We're going to have on success. In here we're going to have form.content is going to be equal to an empty thing, and we're going to have form.attachments empty array. And if it fails, we will for now just say console log error. So obviously we want to have something more helpful down here, but for now that should be sufficient. So I want to just die dump on the chat for now to see that everything goes through fine. And it does. So that's perfect. So this seems to be working as we want it to. So I want to have an attachments in here, which is going to be equal to an empty array. And then we just want to check in here if we have any files. In this case, we just want to check if we have attachments. And then we want to go through request, file, attachments as file. We want to have a path in here, which is going to be file, store, attachments in the public folder. And attachments is then going to be added on here, where we're going to have in here a path and a type. We can get the type by saying file get mime type. We can have the path as path. So now that's done, we can then go ahead and create a message here. So I'm going to have chat messages create, and let's pass through a use ID and content, which is going to be equal to request input content. Default is going to be an empty string. If we just uploading files, we may just have an empty string, so we will have that set. Is typing is going to be set to false. And attachments is going to be set to attachments. And then we just want to return redirect back. We also want to broadcast some events, which we're going to be looking at very briefly. So let's head back in here now and just type in hello world. We need to add the fillables to the message model, which we can do quickly here. attachments, content, user ID, and is typing. Let's go ahead into our database as well and just clear out all our messages. There we go. So what we need to do next is basically inside our send message is we need to make sure that when we send it, we broadcast some events. So let's look at that. So you want to create PPRs and make event, and I'm gonna have an event in here called message sent and one called chat updated. We want to broadcast these here. This one is going to take through a chat and message, and this one is just going to take through a chat. So let's go ahead in here and now make sure that we take in a public chat, public message, just like that. And then in here, let's just make sure we have a public chat. Let's chat. We want to implement should broadcast now on both of them. So let's go and make sure we have that sorted. We don't need these imports here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of them. And alright, so now we going in here to the message sent one, and what we want to do is really just pass through the data here. So broadcast on new private channel. We're gonna call this private chats dot, and in this case this chat ID, and I'm just gonna return new channel. Just like that. Then we also want to pass through a broadcast with in here, and in here we just want to have an array. We want to return in here an array where we're going to have message equal to, in this case, a message resource, make this message. And I just realized we're doing this inside the wrong channel, but let's go in and make sure we have it in here. So in here I'm just gonna return an empty array for now. We still need to broadcast it on the same channel, so that's fine on that end. Inside chat updated, however, we want to pass through the chat. So in here, I'm just gonna have a chat with a chat resource. Make this chat, just like that. So that's basically everything we should need in these two events. Make sure, really importantly, that you have should broadcast now on and use dispatchable. Otherwise, it won't send in real time, and you will be ripping your hair off from trying to debug it, which I've had done a few times before, where I've made that mistake of not adding that in and wondering why it didn't work. So with that sorted, let's now head back in to our show page here. Alright, so now let's go into our show page here. In here we want to have on mounted, and let's just have a window.echo private. In this case we want to go to the chats, and we want to have chats, and then we want to have props.chat.id, and inside our broadcast, actually sorry, channels PHP file, we want to also set up a few things before we start listening. So we want to have a broadcast channel in here with chats.chat ID. We want to have a function in here with a user and chat ID. We want to return chat. Where ID is the same as chat ID. Let's go ahead and import this as well. And we want to have a where has users function query use user. Let's have this on a new line, and in here we just want to have a query where the user exists, and then just want to check if it exists. So that should be everything. So now that we have that sorted, we should be able to then go into our show page here and listen. So we should be able to listen for message sent, and we want to have in here an so I'm gonna add this onto a new line just to make it a bit easier to read. And I'm just gonna go ahead here. Just like that. And in here we just want to basically now start having what we will call a message list instead. So we want to actually load everything from here instead. Import ref. We want to have props.messages.data.reverse. And we want to have this inside an array. And outside of that, we just want to go in here now. We want to say message list, in this case value push e.message. So let's see what's going on here. We have props is not defined. That's because we need to set this to be const props. So let's just make sure this is written properly. So let's head into our chat show controller now. And in here, you can see we are essentially getting all the messages here. But let's go in here because we are going to be using, in this case, the cursor paginate function. So basically, instead of getting it here, we will just use the cursor paginate. This is what we're going to be used for infinitive scroll. And then here we just want to have star, cursor, and cursor. We just want to in here set cursor as an encoded bit. But for now, we're not going to worry overly much about the cursor part. So the encoded cursor is going to be something we send through in the input. Just like that. You also want to pass through the cursor down here, which we're just going to have inside a pagination. There we go. So now we're able to reverse it basically. And this is not just to reverse it, more importantly, this is to have this next cursor bit here. So let's go ahead and just say that we want to open up a different browser here. So I'm going to head into Safari as well. And I'm going to just open up a new window in here. And in here, I'm going to go into Messenger YT.test. So in this case, I'm going to go into www.messenger YT.test. Just like this, and I'm going to go ahead in here because I just had the same passwords for all of them, so I'm just going to go in and log in as Tom. There we go. So if I go in here now and type hi, it does not seem to have gotten through because we're looking in the wrong message bit. So we want to also in here actually, just while we're at it, to make this a bit easier, use message list. Same in here. So I'm gonna go in here now and I'm gonna say hello. Okay, so this hasn't gone through, so let's see if we can, in this case, see what's going on here. We're having issues with reading the name here, so let's go into our user time component quickly. And I'm gonna go ahead in here as well for clearing things up for now. I'm just gonna have one chat. There we go. This is real time, so that's perfect. There's an issue here with the image here, which is not loading for. So let's go into our message.view. And it's loading through fine here. Okay, so we're having a few bugs here we need to address, but we can clearly see that the messages are going through in real time. If we just type in anything here, it goes through down here, but it also goes through in here. So just need to fix a few bugs. So let's take a look at that. Alright, so I've cleared all my messages in here. So let's go ahead in both of these and just refresh. Perfect. So the issue with the image is really just we need to eager load the user. So we want to just get the first message here. We want to have it with user. And let's just see what happens. So if I go in and type hello, that works fine. Perfect. And then I'm going to say morning. And the issue here is obviously we get the get it from an instance here. So we maybe want to say load user instead. Alright, so in here we're getting essentially the user, which is great. So we just need to now make sure it shows on the right side. So if I'm gonna say hi, it shows on the correct side for me, and it shows on this side here. That seems about right. So I think that should basically fix this issue here. So later on, we're gonna have to also go ahead and work on real-time functionality over here, ability to create chats and search in chats. But this video is getting quite long now, so I'm gonna leave that for part 2, which is gonna be coming out before Wednesday next week. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Do let me know, and this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this in 2 parts, so that I can have custom feature requests that people may want to ask about. So do let me know if there's any features you really want to see in the next video, and I'll do my best to add those in. There will only be 2 parts for this series, by the way.